Okay, so what did we discuss in our previous class? First five shlokas of which scripture? Bhagavad Gita, there is. Chapter 13. Okay. What's the title of chapter 13? So what did you discuss in our previous class? Huh? First we discussed? No. Story. Very good. What was the name of the... Forget it. What was the Falashruti? It will take one back to Godhead. Every chapter is like that. So it will free one from all sins. Whatever sins that one has committed, simply by reciting and hearing this chapter, all those sins will go away. So please attend the class regularly. If you miss the class in between, then to that extent the sins are not going away. Huh? Offline. Sins will also go offline only. You want real time, no?
Somehow they'll go, no?
Okay. Hold it. What's happening in this chapter? Who's standing outside?
How to attain?
Huh?
Asha.
I heard Asha Bhosle. I thought, why she has for 2 minutes, I was. Okay.
So chapter 13 opens with
Very good.
six topics. And why is about 6 topics?
Very well, children have to be kept quiet. I can hear murmuring. I'm not able to hear him. Okay. So if the children cannot be quiet here, then we have a wonderful option. Other side of the door. Okay.
Chapter 13 opens with Arjuna inquiring about 6 topics.
Very good.
Which is Prakriti, which is nature. Then we saw Purusha, which is the enjoyer. Then Kshetra, which is the field of activities. Kshetragna, which is the knower of the field. Jnana, which is knowledge. And then Neya, which is the object of knowledge. And we covered 2 aspects of it, I think. Kshetra, Kshetragna, and actually a little bit of 3 of them. Kshetra, which is the field of activities, which is the body, Krishna says. The Kshetragna, which is the knower of the field, which is the soul and the super soul. And then the Jnana, which is knowledge, knowing the body, soul, and the super soul. So we touched on it and we will go into detail of the chapter unfolds.
Okay. Very good. Anything else? Last class was one of the most technical classes, right? Ever. So there was something else that we discussed. So Arjuna asks in verse 4 some questions, no? How the body is constituted, what changes the body undergoes, how and when the body is produced, identity of the knower of the field of activities, what is the influence of the knower. He asked those questions. In verse 5, we saw that Vedic knowledge is acquired through Avaroha, directly through disciplic succession. And there were 2 systems of Vedic knowledge which we saw. One is called as? Very good. One is called as Vyasti and the other is called as? Samasti. We saw that. Vyasti means what? Huh? What is Vyasti?
Meditating on the self.
Okay. Srivalda.
Self to Paramatma.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So a person directs his meditation towards his self, and through that he seeks to understand the Absolute by considering himself a fragment of the Supreme. That's called as the Vyasti system. Like studying an ocean by the drop. And then we saw that when you study like this, then you will observe 5 koshas or sheaths that have engaged one's consciousness. What are those 5 koshas? Annamaya, Pranamaya, Jnanamaya, Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya. All the above 5 are progressively developed concepts of subjective consciousness. We saw that last time. Okay. And samasti means what? One studies the entirety of the universe while considering it the body of the Supreme. And we didn't discuss about samasti at all. We only discussed Jasti. Prabhupada doesn't talk much about it. So the conclusion was what? The Lord expands His energy as the 5 koshas and provides levels of consciousness to the kshetrajna, the knower of the field of activities. These are the levels of consciousness of the knower of the field of activities. Is this clear or no? These are the levels of consciousness of the knower of the field of activities. So which means what? These are the consciousness of a jiva, in short, of living entities. Annamaya we saw is more prevalent in who? Yeah, in the birds and animals. Because their awareness of, they see everything as potential food. Whatever they see is potential food. Pranamaya we saw is living symptoms and life forms. Awareness of one's own active life symptoms. Jnanamaya is awareness of his own thinking, feeling and willing. People who follow Vedic culture. Jnanamaya platform. Vijnanamaya means people at least who have come to the platform of understanding difference between spirit and matter. And Anandamaya is realization of being servant of Krishna. So we saw that.
So is there a chance of, in these koshas, is there a chance of overlap? So one person might be in some reason.
For example, somebody may be in, Vijnanamaya or even Anandamaya, little bit of devotional life, but still, when you see the rasgullas after that. Huh? Then that is Anandamaya. This is Annamaya. Alright, so now we will go to, we'll try and complete verse 6 to verse 19. There's a lot of ground to cover today. Verse 6, 7. The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. Adhanandru, you want to read? Rapid reading.
From all the authoritative statements of the great sages, the Vedic hymns and the aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, the components of this world.
Somewhere the noise is coming from, I don't know. Where it's coming from? Okay, now it's
The components of the world can be understood as follows. First, there is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. These are the 5 great elements, Mahabhuta. Then there are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. Then there are 5 senses for acquiring knowledge: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then 5 waking senses: voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then above the senses there is the mind, which is within and which can be called the sense within. Therefore, including the mind, there are 11 senses altogether. Then there are the 5 objects of the senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. Now the aggregate of these 24 elements is called the field of activity. If one makes an analytical study of this field of these 24 subjects, then he can very well understand the field of the activity. Then there are desire, hatred, happiness, and distress, which are the interactions, representations of the 5 great elements in the gross body. The living symptoms, represented by consciousness and conviction, are the manifestation of the subtle body, mind, ego, and intelligence. These subtle elements are included within the field of activities. The 5 great elements are the gross representation of the false ego, which in turn represents the primal stage of the false ego, technically called the materialistic conception, or tamsa buddhi, intelligence in ignorance. This further represents the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of material nature. The unmanifested modes of material nature are called pradhan. One who desires to know the 24 elements in detail alone, with their intellections should study the philosophy in more detail. In Bhagavad Gita, a summary only is given. The body is the representation of all these factors, and they are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. The body is born, it grows, it stays, it produces byproducts, then it begins to decay, and at the last stage it vanishes. Therefore, the field is a non-permanent material thing. However, the Kshetragna, the nama of the field, its proprietor, is different.
What are the points here? Got a book or no? You got a Bhagavad Gita? Thank you.
Lord talks about the different field of activities basically, for the 24 elements. And what are those 24?
It gives an idea of how the soul is stuck into all the different senses, sense objects and other things, and how at least it will give an idea of what's happening with one person at a higher level.
Okay.
Talks about the interaction of different body, mind, subtle body, gross body, and depending on that is based on the interactions of and how the living entity, they are limited by those interactions.
Prabhupada mentions about the 6 vikars, the changes in the very goes through. So, he talks about the 7 qualities of mind and its interaction with the 24 elements. Whatever it is.
You have read Burijan Prabhu's purport?
Yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have used the word vikaras. Okay. Good. Anything else?
Actually, the field is non-permanent. In all these activities which are happening within the field, which is impermanent, but the Kshetrajna, the knower of the body is permanent, eternal.
Good. Okay. So, in verses 6 and 7, the field of activities is being discussed further. Last week we had discussion on Kshetra, Kshetrajna and little bit of Jnana. Now here the field of activities is being discussed further. Field of activities is what? Body, which is what? Kshetra. So there are 24 material elements that are discussed here. And it is mentioned that the 7 qualities of the mind are derived from interactions of these 24 elements. Let's just read this once again. The 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, unmanifested attentions in the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and the convictions, all these are considered to be the field of activities. So, based on the interaction of these 24 elements, then what are the feelings that we have? We get desire, we get hatred, distress, happiness, so many things we get. So, these are all the interplay of the 24 elements. Which means what? The desires which we get in connection with the material energy are material desires. Spiritual desires, where do we get from? We get spiritual desires from Super Soul. Hands up if you agree with that statement. Some people are agreeing, okay. Where do we get spiritual desires from? Where do we get the desire for Krishna consciousness from?
The soul by itself has got that
Beautiful.
nature.
We don't get it from anywhere. Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is not an artificial imposition on the mind. go back to your SSR. So it doesn't come from anywhere. That is innate. The desire to enjoy materially, that comes from outside, from the interaction of the jiva of the soul with the material elements. So that is what is an imposed condition. Otherwise, the natural condition is to always serve the Lord. Jivara Swarupa Hoy, Krishnena Nityavasa. So in verse 4, Lord Krishna, if you go back to verse 4, now please hear my brief description of this field of activity, how it is constituted, what its changes are, and that is where the word vikara is used. So in verse 4, Lord Krishna mentioned that he will discuss the vikaras or the changes that the material body will undergo. So how many changes are there that the material body undergoes? 6 changes. What are those? Stays and then produces some byproducts, decays and vanishes. Therefore, the field, what is the field? Field of activity is the body. So the field is permanent or temporary? Temporary. So that is a key message here. The field is non-permanent because it is material in nature. The field is material. So it is non-permanent. However, Kshetrajna or the knower and proprietor of the field is it material? No. So that is the difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So it is said, there is a nice comparison which is given. It is said that the field of activities is compared to a playground in the backyard surrounded by a fence. Okay. So a child is playing. Here we have many of course in Albert Park, we cannot afford such houses with the backyard and a fence and the child plays and all. Okay. So if we go outside, maybe Dairy Mart, is it? Then you can afford such houses. Okay. The child can play in the courtyard behind, like that. So even though the child is playing, the child is still having a freedom to play only within the allotted field, which is limited by the fence. You cannot go to the neighboring fence and then say that, I am continuing my game. Or you cannot put the stumps there and say, we want 22 yards or whatever. You can't say like that. So like that, we cannot enjoy beyond the domain of what our body will permit. What these 24 elements for us will permit. Body, mind and karma. We cannot enjoy beyond that, beyond the fence that these things put. For example, a person may be very rich. He may be able to afford, food from Hilton Hotel every day. Okay, he can order. But if he has diabetes, then he cannot eat that food because he is restricted by the body. Right? So many things like that. So many examples we can see in the material world. Or a person, he is very wealthy, he has got all the money, but then he is in jail. So he has no access to that money. So though he has crores of rupees outside, he is sleeping on a mattress, and he has to use the public toilet, which is used by other people who are kept in prison. And these people they have estates and properties outside. So this is a result of karma. So nobody can change that. Now, coming to the field of activity, talking about the field of activities, another example is given that the field of activities, the size of that field is different for different living entities. So Gurujan Prabhu gives an example that an earthworm it's got a very small field of activity. It cannot read, write, it cannot jump, or it cannot run. It can simply crawl, that's all, to a limited extent. It can crawl through the dirt. And that too it does it when it rains. And when the rain stops, then it goes back slowly. As slowly as it has come, it will crawl back into the soil, like that. Whereas it is mentioned that the dog has got a larger field of activities. You can throw a ball to the dog and it can run for some distance. And a human being can go even further. He has got a even further domain or range of activities, field of activities. So what is the key point in this whole discussion? What is that one punchline?
Limitation. Field is temporary and limited.
Okay. Still you have to complete the sentence. Partly you have covered.
It depends on what type of body you get according to.
It depends on what type of body you get and what decides what type of body you get.
That's
Karma.
So therefore, one's kshetra is based upon one's karma. So that is a key point, essentially.
Prabhu, can you elaborate this interactions actually? What does that exactly mean?
Which interaction?
When we say 7 elements of mind interacting with the 24 elements of the body, all that. So exactly what does that mean?
So this is mentioned, it's a big topic. Okay, so I'll just give you a very high level at this stage, because if we get into that, it's a very technical subject matter. We can do it maybe some other time in detail. You can read the second or third canto, the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Kapila teachings?
Kapila, yeah, you can even read Sankhya Yoga section, so which is also fine. So where you will understand that essentially the interaction of the modes of material nature with false ego has an impact on several things. The whole description is given, how originally the pradhan is there, which is the primeval cosmic substance. In one corner there is a dark cloud in the spiritual sky, which is called as pradhan. Then how Mahavishnu glances at that, and then it is activated through Shambhu. And how when it is activated, the pradhan is activated, then from the pradhan gets transformed into gross and the subtle elements of the body. Like that. And then how the modes of material nature are interacting with the false ego to produce different things. There's a whole chain which is given. If you want, I'll bring some data next week on that. We will not discuss it in detail in the class because beyond the scope of this course, it will come in Srimad Bhagavatam. But just for your knowledge, I can give you what plus what is equal to what. Those equations you can keep in mind. It will help you in preaching or something like that. So, the key point here is what? One kshetra is based upon one's karma. Now, there is another interesting point that comes, that the jiva becomes so accustomed to the limitations of one's own body and mind because of one's karma that one cannot even see beyond one's field of activities. That is, Prabhupada sometimes calls that as the frog mentality. The frog cannot see any truth beyond the well. Right? So people cannot see, people who are deeply engrossed in the mode of passion and ignorance, people who are deep in ignorance cannot see anything beyond the body. Right? For them the body is the all in all. But people in the mode of passion, they are interested in excelling in mundane activities. Again, they cannot see the higher goals of life because they are so busy in their field of activities. Okay, I want to become the CIO of a company, I want to become the CEO of a company. The whole life is oriented towards that. All decision making is oriented towards that because that is their field of activity. That is their thinking. So therefore, they can't go beyond that. So a jiva gets accustomed to these limitations. And here it is mentioned, nice example is given. A wealthy child may have many toys, but still it is restricted by the fence, right? Which means the jiva of the soul is capable of achieving much higher things, but it is restricted by its own field of activities owing to one's karma, which gives us a particular disposition, a particular way of thinking, particular likes and dislikes. Correct? That's how all of us are different. Some people like music very much. Some people say, "Oh no, I can't even understand anything. I can't differentiate between one rag and another rag. I don't even know anything like that." Okay? So all of us are different in that. Some people cannot differentiate between one type of cooking and another type of cooking. Correct. So we all are made different. Okay. So a wealthy child may have many toys, but still is restricted by the fence. It is said that the wealthy child may even be proud, thinking himself to be very happy, swinging, playing with the toy car and the sandbox. Murali Prabhu writes all this. Nevertheless, the child is absorbed only in an insignificant backyard. at the end of the day. Knows nothing of life beyond that fence. So then he concludes that Jiva is accustomed to the limitations of body and mind received through karma and cannot see beyond the field of activity. So in that sense, the kshetra of every jiva is arranged by karma through the agency of Maya. That is how Maya is able to attract some people more than others. That's because of her karma. So, Bhujan Prabhu concludes by saying that the Lord is not partial. This section. The Lord is therefore not partial. As the super soul, he is the knower of all the kshetras. As the super soul, he is the knower of all the kshetras. We, as the soul, we know only our kshetra, that too partially. Sometimes when it pains, we don't even know where it is paining. I'm not sure, we saw that time. Whether it's paining here or whether it's tooth pain, we will not know. Because we are all limited like that. But the kshetrajna is knower of all the kshetras. So, and the kshetrajna simply sanctions awarding each jiva with his or her own field of activities. Okay? Now, how do we come out of this frog mentality? So, the solution is to develop what? If you have to know something beyond this domain, what is it that we have to develop? Knowledge. Okay. So, the solution is to develop knowledge that helps transcend this insignificant backyard or courtyard, whatever. Insignificant and limited backyard, if you like. And Lord Krishna, therefore, from this topic, he migrates to the topic of knowledge. So it's important to cultivate knowledge. As we said in the last section, the middle 6 chapters we covered Bhakti in great detail. Bhakti is sandwiched in the Bhagavad Gita. And then the last 6 chapters are going to be how Jnana leads to Bhakti. So there's quite a bit of emphasis on knowledge. So in verse 8 to verse 12, Lord Krishna is talking about this knowledge, cultivation of knowledge, to come out of this limited thinking. Text 8 to 12. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge. And besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. So who can do rapid reading? Just Prabhu. Not full purport we can't read, otherwise we will never complete. 9 o'clock we will complete reading the purport. So just read one and then we will discuss.
The process of knowledge is sometimes misunderstood by less intelligent men as being the interaction of the field of activity. But actually this is the real process of knowledge. If one accepts this process, then the possibility of approaching the absolute truth exists. This is not the interaction of 24 elements as described before. This is actually the means to get out of the entanglement of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of 24 elements, and the process of knowledge as described here is the means to get out of it. Of all the descriptions of the process of knowledge, the most important point is described in the first line of the 11th verse. The process of knowledge terminates in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord. So, if one does not approach or is not able to approach the transcendental service of the Lord, then the other 19 items are of no particular value. But if one takes to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, the other 19 items automatically develop within him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, all the good qualities of the knowledge develop in one who has attained the stage of devotional service. The principle of accepting a spiritual master, as mentioned in the 8th verse, is essential. Even for one who takes to devotional service, it is the most important. Transcendental life begins when one accepts a bona fide spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, clearly states here that this process of knowledge is actual path. Anything speculated beyond this is nonsense. Do you want me to continue reading?
Actually, it's a very interesting purport, but we don't have time, unfortunately. But how many of you have read and come? 2 people only, eh? Are the study groups meeting or?
We met, but we couldn't read.
Couldn't read. Please read and come. Because there are so many things in this purport that Prabhupada talks about.
It took us 3 classes of Bhakti Vriksha just to complete this one verse.
You can take many more classes actually. Actually, start. Even Bhaktivedanta Swami, if you remember in Sydney, touched upon some of these aspects.
Yes.
So we'll see if some extra time is there, we'll come back to this. So we have to complete the course also. So there are 12 aims of Sastri study. One of the aims is what? Responsibility for learning. You all have written that in the paper. But please practice that also. Because another aim of Shastric study is what? Practical, personal application. So responsibility, personal application. So we have to read. There is no substitute for reading. It's not that, sometimes we may develop this mentality that week after week let us attend the Bhakti Shastri class and towards the end exam will come and then Prabhu will tell what are the important aspects. Then we will work very hard like donkeys, we will sit and study. And then after that we will write the paper. So this is general mentality. This will not get us anywhere, but it has to be regular study. So the leaders have to lift their game, cell leaders. Ensure that your group is meeting and regularly discussing and reading these things. Otherwise depth will not come. See, the disadvantage of exam-oriented study is, what is the disadvantage of exam-oriented study?
Just study before the exam and forget after the exam.
Okay. You forget after the exam. What are some other disadvantages?
Realization.
Correct, you will not develop any realizations. There will be no depth. There will be no contemplation. Realization will only come when you contemplate. You read something, then you think about events in the world, think about yourself. Just spend some time just thinking, and then realizations will come. And that will be much deep. Then even in preaching, it will come automatically to you. Because its realizations will come automatically. Anything which is by-hearted as a speech will stay till here and it will come out and it will be gone. But something which is realized will always stay with you. So you don't have to prepare for a class. So after completing this course, none of the people in this room should say that if we have to tell Prabhu, please give class now. Speaker is gone. At 4:55 if you are told, you should say okay, no problem. And sit at 5 o'clock and start a class and give a class on any section of the Bhagavad Gita. Correct? That should be the ability we have to develop. And that ability will not come if we are only doing exam-oriented kind of things. Recently we studied for our Bhakti Vaibhav exam. Bhaktivedanta exam. And Jagan Prabhu, you attended for the first time that study group. Correct? Will you agree that we covered much more than what was covered in the summary that Keshav Prabhu gave?
Yes.
We covered many more points than even Keshav Prabhu covered in the summary. And Keshav Prabhu was very happy towards the end of the exam. So to that depth we went and dissected virtually every important point that came across in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Government Prabhu also attended for the first time. Right? So then if we do that kind of study, then we will become very thorough and it will stay with us. Okay, yes, some people may get half mark here, half mark more here and there. But it will stay with you. Like So please take it seriously. Please read. The whole idea of the course is not to get a certificate. Certificate will give us pride. But the knowledge which we derive from this study will give us humility. Okay? So there is a risk. If we only remain, otherwise we will be called as Bhakti Sastri so and so Das. Like that. Alright. So Lord Krishna defines knowledge as knowing the field and knowing the two knowers of the field. Knowledge is what? Knowledge of the field and knowledge of the knower of two knowers of the field. Who are those two knowers? Atma and Paramatma. And field is body. So, these verses which are here combined, 8 to 12, they describe the process of obtaining jnana. In one sense, they describe two things. They describe certain qualities which are good from a jnana, which are in the mode of goodness, which are conducive for developing knowledge, and they talk also about the process of knowledge. They talk about both. So there are how many qualities are given here? Anyone counted?
20.
20. Counted. Or you know from the purport?
The purport.
Good. That means you are right. Okay. So, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that 17 out of these 20 qualities which are mentioned here applies to jnanis as well as bhaktas. 17 out of these 20 qualities which are mentioned here are common to jnanis as well as bhaktas. Whereas the last two qualities, accepting the importance of self-realization, where it is mentioned Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam, and philosophical search for the absolute truth, Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. These two are technically only for the jnani. Tattva Jnan. Is it required for a devotee? Why? Can you, suppose someone says Tattva Jnan you must cultivate. It's very important for a devotee. What you will say? How will you refute?
With Bhakti it gets automatically cultivated.
Correct. With Bhakti it automatically gets cultivated. That's what Prabhupada writes in the purport. And in any case, pure Bhakti is what? So we don't need too much of paralysis of analysis to become a devotee, right? More simple we are, faster we will go back to Godhead. So technically speaking, these two qualities are only for the jnani. It doesn't mean that devotees do not develop any knowledge, but you don't have to go too much. For example, devotees don't get too hung up. Prabhuji, what is the interaction of the false ego with the mode of passion? What does it produce? And you don't lose sleep over that. No, oh my God, what was that thing? No. That's why Prabhupada said, chant and be happy. That's all. Just chant nicely, eat prasadam, dance, do service. Automatically all this knowledge will come. Whatever knowledge is required to go back to Godhead will automatically manifest. No need to do paralysis of analysis. So, Lord says, constant and unalloyed devotion to me is the sole quality which is specific for a devotee. Correct? Where is it? It's mentioned somewhere in between. Maybe 16th, huh? Yeah. Can you see that? Constant and unalloyed devotion to me. So, out of all these qualities, this is the sole quality which is specific for a devotee. And if this is there, then all other qualities come automatically. For one, who is endeavoring for constant unalloyed devotion. Everything else will follow automatically. Hands up if you are humble to the extent you are before you were a devotee. At least I was not, I can tell you. Unabashedly I will admit here. Not that I have become very humble now, but it is much better than before. Before that I thought I was the center of the universe. Okay. At least now I don't think like that. Correct?
Lord of all you survey.
Oh yeah, I am the Lord of all I survey. Like that. So thankfully, we don't think like that now. We have seen devotional service. Of course, we have to be humble, but we should also give due credit to the process of devotional service, that the devotional service has changed us. Correct? To quite an extent. At least we have stopped using abusive language. Correct? I come from Bombay where it is used in every sentence. Correct? There is no conversation without that. Right? And then you realize that you just can't use that kind of a language. So you see automatically devotional life has brought in many changes. There is more control over anger. Right? There is little bit more sobriety has come. We cannot say we are the epitomes of sobriety, but at least definitely more sober. Before Krishna Consciousness, if we were chapad, now we are at least little bit less. Correct? Less bol bachan they say. Correct? So we are slightly sobered down. Aram say, take it easy little bit. Okay. Hang on, thoda thanda, like that. So we have seen automatically we have developed many qualities. If you look back, then you will realize what we were and what we are now. In college days, whichever lady goes, one has to comment something. Go there, jari, like that. Correct? Many, go back. Of course, everyone is laughing. But if you go back, it was a very abominable situation for most of us who were not devotees. The boys will comment on the girls. The girls will also group together and discuss about one boy. Like that. But then as we grow up, then in devotional service, then we start thinking that what was that what we were engaged in. It looks, so how could I have been like that? You sometimes start thinking like that. Was I that? So automatically these qualities come. Now some people may say, नहीं, उम्र के साथ अपने आप आ जाता है. Does it come? Does it come with age only? No, it doesn't. I have seen many times, we see people who are 50 plus also, they also sit and engage in these conversations, like that. Only they are not talking about, they are talking in their age group. That's all. Conversation is the same. Right? So therefore we have to give credit to the process of bhakti, which has brought us from wherever we were to here. Srila Prabhupada has saved us big time from eternal damnation. Right? So constant and unalloyed devotion to me is the sole quality specific to a devotee. All other qualities will come automatic. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayajita Janayati Asu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahetukam. By performing devotional service, knowledge and detachment will automatically manifest in a devotee. Now some qualities are mentioned like cleanliness, etc., which are very favorable for one's spiritual advancement if developed. Now we have to understand this carefully. 26 qualities of a devotee are mentioned. And I think recently, was it Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj? Yes, he was mentioning this. That out of the 26 qualities of a devotee, which is the most important quality? Anyone remember? Recently Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj mentioned. Huh? No. Recently, no. None of you attended. How come? Recently he gave this class. Pride is a quality. Lack of pride. Okay. Pridelessness.
Chanting of the Harinam.
That's not a quality, it's an activity. Correct. Krishnaika Sharanam, which means affection for surrender to the Lord. That is the most important quality. All others are subordinate to that. Right? we can be very humble. We have devotees. Sometimes we see in the congregation also Hare Krishna Prabhu, like that. But then after that they will spread Ritvik philosophy in the congregation, or they will say that Prabhupada's books were tampered with. We should not do this. But externally Hare Krishna Mataji, like that. They will go around like that, like snakes. They will eat in the temple. They will survive, they learn their ABCDs in this congregation, in Bhaktivedanta program, and then what happens? They will fly outside and they will say that, this is like that, as if they are big jnanis, That sampradaya is what is the real sampradaya. This sampradaya is not as good as that sampradaya, as if they have got some many divine realizations. But if you see their behavior with other devotees, then you may say, okay, I don't know whether that sampradaya is better or this sampradaya is better, but I definitely know that you are far off from any sampradaya. Your behavior is neither of these sampradayas right now, because you are blaspheming the Vaishnavas who are engaged in propagating spiritual knowledge. So what sampradaya, which sampradaya is that? No sampradaya teaching says that. Correct? So that is, so people, so externally some humility, some Hare Krishna and all will be there. Maybe they are also being very strict in dealing with the opposite sex and very pakka. But at the end of the day there is no surrender to the Lord. So there is no respect for the Lord's devotees. There is no relationship with the Lord's devotees. You don't go anywhere. So the most important quality is Krishna Eka Sharanam. Now, behavior, sadachar, is a very important aspect of bhakti, no doubt about it. But if you see Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, okay, when people used to go to him, Babaji, blessings, what he will say? He will yell at them to such an extent that they will never dare to come again, near him. Now you will say, Babaji, sadachar. No. Will you say like that? Obviously we know what kind of platform Gaur Kishore Das Babaji is in. When there is Krishna Eka Sharanam, when that quality is there, then anything else is less important than that. It doesn't mean that he was not humble. If he were not humble, then he wouldn't be what he is. Right? We are talking about a big Acharya, a big Goswami, right? But Babaji sometimes a very senior devotee, a highly self-realized person, he may be oblivious to external circumstances. He may not want any disturbance to his bhajan. He may want to keep off people who are really not interested in bhakti. So he may be very heavy on them. So we have to really, we cannot judge them based on their external dealings with people. So to be very careful. So out of the 26 qualities of Vaishnava, if that one quality is there, Krishnaika Sharanam, if that quality is there, we need not assess any of the other qualities of that person, because all other qualities are there in that person automatically. We may not understand their behavior and we may misinterpret their behavior for pride or arrogance or whatever, but they have that one single quality which is good enough, which means all other qualities are perfect if that one quality is there. Surrender to the Lord. So but still, because we are not on that platform, we are all recommended to cultivate those qualities. One quality is cleanliness. Now, generally, if you see highly realized Babajis, they will sleep in the mud. They will have matted hair. They will not comb hair nicely, with the center parting and nicely and pakka with tilak and dhoti and kurta, perfect shining ladies and gentlemen. They may not look like that. Okay, they may have mud over their body. But can we say they are not clean? Can we apply the principles of cleanliness over there? No, because there is Krishna Eka Sharanam is there over there. So it doesn't matter. Cleanliness means internal and external cleanness, no doubt. But when a person is completely not in the bodily concept of life at all, when he is already a Jivan Mukta, then these rules don't apply to such a personality. But for us, we have to follow the principles of cleanliness. We cannot say tomorrow I will just wear kaupin and danda and I will go to the temple because Babaji Maharaj ne kiya aisa. People will kick us out of the congregation. Aniruddha will say, Jagannath Ram, what's wrong? Shall I call the cat team to take you away? They'll call the police. Something is wrong with this guy. So this is called as premature renunciation. So we don't do all those things. But, so for us, following the principles of Vaidhi Bhakti is very important at the initial stage of Bhakti. Very important. So we are recommended to take bath every day. At Grihasthas, how many times? Twice a day. Thrice a day. Twice a day. Sannyasis is one. 3 times a day. Brahmachari is once a day.
Minimum once a day.
Minimum once a day. Yeah. Hands up if you take bath twice a day. Don't. Hands up if you take bath once a day. So we don't have to do Jumma to Jumma. Alright. Now, as much as lot of qualities are mentioned here, there are certain process items also which are given here. What is one such process item which is given here, which is conducive for development of bhakti? What is one of the process items? Process item. Approaching a bona fide guru. That's a process item. And also perceiving evils of birth, disease, old age and death. Many people, when you tell them birth, disease, old age and death, they say, तुम लोग ISKCON वाले लोग ऐसा क्यों बात करते हैं? निराशावादी, pessimistic. Be positive. Life offers many different colors. Enjoy it. Don't be pessimistic. Don't talk about birth, disease, old age, death. Few days back, there was somebody's birthday and I was asked to speak there on that birthday thing. So I started off whoever is born has to die. Emerald was telling me, क्या है birthday का दिन थोड़ा control तो करो. No, Emerald, my mother, one of you corrected me. My mother told me. So a little bit you should have told, no, what is this? Poor fellow was going to cut cake, small, smiling, with a new t-shirt and all that. New kurta was there. And we are talking about everybody who's born has to die. But it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. We have to constantly perceive the evils of birth, disease, old age and death. Why are we actually, if you actually see, why are we doing the activities today? Today most of our time goes in what? Devotional service, unalloyed bhakti, Krishna Ekaya Sharanam. How much time in a day? Last time when we went for the yatra, we were talking with Premnidhi Prabhu and he was actually asking how many time. Tell me how many hours maximum you are thinking of Krishna related activities, of Krishna Smaran mein hote ho? 1 घंटा, 2 घंटा. I said, हाँ, chanting 2 घंटा चलता है. Krishna Smaran होता है वो 2 घंटे में भी. In those 2 hours also, do we think of Krishna? So how much time in a day are we thinking of Krishna actually? We don't want an answer here, but we have to think for ourselves. Most of the time, where are we? We are busy with our field of activities. Correct, no? We are busy with our field of activities. We are planning. We are either planning or we are doing. Correct? It has got nothing to do with the eternal, the process for liberation. It has got nothing to do with that. We are not doing that process most of the time. Correct? So, why are we like this? Because we are forgetting birth, disease, old age, death. When we are in office, do we think we are going to die? Suppose there is a meeting in office, some important meeting, some presentation is there. The boss is coming, the CEO of the company is coming and we have to do a presentation. Or some very important client meeting is there. When tomorrow, but you are told that you have 4 hours to live. What do you do? You say, okay, laptop लेके आना जल्दी फटाफट presentation बना देता हूँ. Will we do like that? नहीं, boss has told, hey, no, after career का सवाल है भाई. जाते at least अच्छा नाम तो कमा के जाओ. देख assignment करके गया हो. He did not give up his assignment, office work, even though he left. Very good. He needs such employees. Will we do that? What will you do? Correct? Even the client, if he is told he has got only 5 hours to live, will he attend the presentation? Correct? So because we forget that we are going to die. So we are not perceiving the evils of birth, disease, old age and death. Constantly we don't think about it. But the more we think about it, the more we will come back to the activities which are most important in our lives. And the more we forget, keep that away, the more and more we are going to get engrossed in more and more activities. For example, we'll be deeply entrenched. When will I buy my second house? Where should I buy my second house? Should I buy my second house now? Is the market good? No, how much tax I am paying? How I can reduce my taxes? All this means what? I am thinking that right now, tomorrow, death is not going to come. Correct? So, I am not saying that we should not do that. Some people are smiling. But these are symptoms of common people like us, struggling, new bhaktas, or Vaishnava abhas that we are. We have many issues for discussion. Many different worries we have. Other than the worry, am I going to go back to Godhead in this lifetime? That is, sometimes our daily life doesn't reflect that we are really worried about that part. We are worried about so many things. So here it is mentioned, specific quality is mentioned, which is called knowledge. Being in knowledge means what? Always being under the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age and disease. Always have that perception when we do things. So these items are means of acquiring transcendental knowledge, or for having an accurate understanding of the body, soul and the super soul. So what is the key point? Whatever we discussed, what is the key point here? The key point is if these 20 items, this is the key point, okay? So please note this down. Key point is, if these 20 items are taken as part of a process that will carry us to transcendence, if these 20 items we take as important for our transcendental development, then these 20 items have nothing to do with our field of activities or its interactions. Which means what? Again, coming back to the same point, cultivation of all these good qualities, if it is for development of bhakti, if it is for the pleasure of Lord Krishna, then such activities have got nothing to do with the field of activities or its interactions, which means they are not material in nature. Otherwise, simply developing humility without the impetus being God consciousness will at best put us in the mode of goodness. It will not help us transcend the modes of material nature. So that is the key point here. Is it clear or no? All these good qualities have to be developed in relationship to Krishna. Otherwise they are like ornaments on a dead body. Looking very good, okay, but the body is dead body. Correct? They are like that.
Can you please repeat that statement?
They are like ornaments on a dead body. Any qualities?
Key point. The key point.
The key point.
These 20 items.
So these 20 points have to be taken as a process that carries one to transcendence. If taken in that spirit, in that mood, then these 20 items have nothing to do with the field of activities or with its interactions. That is the key point. In verses 13 to 19, now after this, Lord Krishna is discussing Arjuna's 6th topic, object of knowledge. Is it there on the board?
Yes.
Neya, object of knowledge. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the... Sorry, I didn't read properly. I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. Okay. So, Mother, you want to read? Very fast. Fast reading.
The Lord has explained the field of activities and the knower of the field. He has also explained the process of knowing the knower of the field of activities. Now he begins to explain the knowable. First the soul and then the super soul. By knowledge of the knower, both the soul and the super soul, one can relish the nectar of life. As explained in the second chapter, the living entity is eternal. This is also confirmed here. There is no specific date at which the Jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out a history of the Jivatma manifestations from the Supreme Lord. Therefore, it is beginningless. The Vedic literature confirms this. The knower of the body is never born and never dies, and he is full of knowledge. The Supreme Lord as a super soul is also stated in the Vedic literature to be Pradhana
Kshetrajna Patir Gunesha,
the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In this Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Hare Deva Jnanesha Katarjana. The living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of the Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul, and when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that this is as opposed to It is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Ananda Brahma is the Supreme Brahman personality of Godhead.
So, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to explain the object of knowledge. In which verse has he asked that?
First verse.
In first verse he has asked. So there are two knowable objects which we saw in Srila Prabhupada's purport. What are the two knowable objects? Soul and super soul. Now, the ensuing verses from 14 to 18 are going to describe the super soul as the Nyaya. So who is the Nyaya actually? The super soul, which is the object of our knowledge. In these sections, the object of knowledge is who? The Paramatma. So 14 to 18 will describe the super soul as Nyaya. And in this particular text, Gurujan Prabhu clarifies that this particular text, Srila Prabhupada explains. What happened? Okay. Sorry. In this text, Srila Prabhupada now has explained, he has described the first object of knowledge, which is the soul. Unless we understand the soul, we cannot understand the super soul. Now, there are two terminologies which are mentioned. Ananda Brahma and Vijnana Brahma. So these are again coming from text 5, where we talked about Vijnana Maya and Ananda Maya. Now, in text 14 to 18, Prabhupada is giving lot of reference. Even here, Prabhupada has given lot of reference, which are very similar to the verses from the Upanishads, where the super soul is described. Now, if you, there is a small caveat when we read this particular section. It's a very technical section. So, Gurujan Prabhu cautions us that when we read this, we have to understand that though these verses, when you read it prima facie, it may sound as though that which is knowable is the impersonal Brahman. When someone reads like this, if you read the next purport, for example, if you just go to the next verse, it says, everywhere are his hands and legs. If you read these kind of things, usually the mind tells us that we are talking about Brahman. So that is where Gurujan Prabhu is cautioning us. And Prabhupada is also in his purport, he is preempting that point. Don't think like that. So these verses make it sound as though that which is knowable is the impersonal Brahman. But finally in text 18, Lord Krishna makes the meaning very clear, very apparent. But Srila Prabhupada, Gurujan Prabhu mentioned that Srila Prabhupada makes it very clear in the initial purports itself that what is being discussed here is the super soul, not Brahman. So that suspense already is broken in one sense. Why? Because otherwise there will be misunderstanding till that suspense is revealed by Lord Krishna later on. So Prabhupada does not even want to take a risk of his disciples going slightly off track, away from the super soul to the impersonal understanding of God. Yeah.
Even the verse specifically states that Brahman is subordinate to me.
Correct.
So this verse itself states, which is Brahman, which is subordinate to me. So
correct.
Making clear in the verse itself.
Correct. But Burijan Prabhu also writes that Prabhupada has translated this verse as such. That's why I am specifically mentioning this. Otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned this. I know where you are coming from. Even I had the same feeling when I read the purport. Right? Translation itself says like that. But Prabhupada has given the clarity in the translation, which otherwise, if you only take the words of Sanskrit, the translation may not be, in pristine Sanskrit translation will mean it wouldn't have come across the way Prabhupada has clarified it. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And that's why Prabhupada is doing this in each and every verse. He is telling us, he is breaking the suspense and telling us it is Paramatma, Paramatma, Paramatma. So for a reader, it's very easy then to relate to what's going on. Otherwise we'll go off track, only then to come on track in verse 18. And then go back and we have to read everything in that context. So Prabhupada is saving us that trouble in this section. Text 14. Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces. Haribol, there's a lot of noise. Huh? Someone can just... Little bit strong dose.
Kids are playing in the lift. It's very dangerous.
Little bit strong dose you have to give. Huh? Everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. So Srila Prabhupada's purport here strongly confirms that this verse, which refers to the all-pervading, describes the super soul, Paramatma, and not the Jiva. And Srila Prabhupada writes, Burijan Prabhu writes that in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.1 also a cross reference has been given which will help us understand this verse properly. So I'm going to read that out. Where Srila Prabhupada describes that those who wish to understand this verse as referring to the Jivas as all pervading may properly do so. So even if we are understanding it as this is referring to the Jivas in their, because Jivas are also Brahman at the end of the day. Even if it is referring to Jivas, the understanding has to be properly done. And therefore Srila Prabhupada refers to 2.2.1. And I'll just read out what is there in the purport. It says, the kingdom of God is unlimited. The kingdom of God is unlimited. Therefore, the number of the assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. The Bhagavad Gita 13.14 asserts that the Lord has his hands, legs, eyes and mouths in every nook and corner of his creation, which is what it did. This means that the expansions of differentiated parts and parcels called jivas or living entities are assisting hands of the Lord, and all of them are meant for rendering a particular pattern of service to the Lord. So, what is the point that Prabhupada is trying to make here? I know it's a very technical, little bit, it may get, looks like it may be slightly dry also, this section, in that sense. But we'll have to go through this. It's a technical section. I see blazed expressions on people's faces. So, let me complete this point. So, therefore, what is the point here at the end of the day? What is the point that is being discussed? Let's just come back to the gist without going too much into details.
Super soul is everywhere.
So, this is talking about the super soul. Even if it is talking about the soul, it simply says that there are millions and millions of souls that are engaged in serving the Lord. That is what it means. Many hands, legs, arms, which means all the jivas are still subordinate to Bhagavan. And the jivas are not Bhagavan. Prabhupada is very, it comes across, Prabhupada's mood comes across that Prabhupada is seeing a risk that these verses can be misunderstood. So therefore he is very carefully giving us all these purports. Sorry, there was somebody had a question or comment? You.
In 2.2.1, it said that Lord Brahma, he was meditating on Virat root. And then after that he regained his consciousness by appeasing the Lord. So I was a bit confused. Why was Lord Brahma meditating on Virat root? And then if he was meditating on Virat root, which is material, then how did he appease Lord Vishnu and regain his consciousness?
I don't remember that section today. Can I answer that question next class?
Okay.
I remember having studied this and I remember having discussed this in Srimad Bhagavatam class also, many years back. In 2007 we did this section. But I can't remember why Lord Brahma meditated on the Virat root. I can't give you an answer offline now, immediately, because of memory. But I'll answer that in the next class. Don't put it in the car park, because I don't know if one exists.
Sitting with you, no?
Car park is with me.
Given you all the answers for your review before it's distributed.
You sent me a mail with the car park question, is it?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. It's like a document which you sent. If you don't want something to be acted upon, then send me an email. Yeah.
I asked him all the questions and he answered it.
He answered, yeah.
And I typed it and I emailed it to you.
Oh, is it? How come? No, seriously, I didn't see this email of yours. Huh? Please resend.
You are infallible, so mistake must be mine. I'll say it again.
Okay. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. So it's a very cryptic section, if you see. There are so many things. No? He is far away, still he is near. He is outside, still he is inside. He is everywhere, still he is unreachable.
And it also said this without senses.
Yeah, without senses, which means material senses. So that is the key point in this verse actually. So if you see, Lord Krishna is describing the knowable in this text as avigneyam. Avigneyam means what? Unknowable. He is describing the knowable as what? Unknowable. Damu Prabhu. Confused. Yeah. So he is describing the knowable as unknowable. It indicates what? That the super soul cannot be understood with material senses. That's all it means. Okay. And how then can he be understood? By the process of hearing. Only by hearing with devotion from transcendental source he can be understood. So don't worry too much if you don't know what is going on now. I have a dirty feeling that some people don't know what is going on now in the class. And you are waiting for 9:15. Oh my God, when will these sections get over? It's like when you enter a flight, there is turbulence now, you start praying, oh my Lord, when will this get over? Like that. Okay. So don't worry. The conclusion is that the Lord is, just 2 points you remember in this section. That it is talking about the super soul or Brahman? Super soul. Is the super soul knowable by material senses? No. How is the super soul to be known? By hearing from who? With devotion. That's all. If you know this much, then you have understood this section.
You will pass the exam.
Then you will pass the exam.
No exam.
Go back to Godhead also if you know this much. All this is being spoken to Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Just imagine.
No exam on this chapter.
He's already in anxiety. But Arjuna did not have to write an exam. Of course, he had his own exam. Okay, so verse 17. Okay, please let's keep please do not have cross discussions. Rajava Prabhu, Suvarna Krishna Prabhu, Shashi Prabhu.
I'm not discussing at all.
Don't even, if someone else is discussing, don't hear. That person is discussing. Your ear should be here. Till 9:15. Although the super soul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. So finally here Lord Krishna is revealing that he is talking about Super Soul. Because very clearly, even in the, if you see the Sanskrit, if you see the translation, it will become very evident that Lord Krishna is now unraveling the mystery, which Srila Prabhupada has already unraveled 4 verses before, right? So he clearly reveals the identity of the one who he has been describing thus far. So the Nyaya is who? Ultimately, what is the conclusion? The Nyaya is the Super Soul. The Super Soul is the object of all knowledge. Hridi Sarvasya, who is present in everyone's hearts. And Srila Prabhupada in the purports, he cites several verses from the Upanishads to substantiate that these verses have been describing neither the Jiva nor the Brahman, but the Super Soul. Again, this purport is also just establishing that it is a Super Soul. So Lord Krishna ends his explanation of the knowable by describing to Arjuna the qualifications of one who is able to understand these topics. Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Dineshwar Prabhu, you want to read? This is very important, this purport, because it is a summary of everything. If you understand this, that's good enough for today. We have gone through a very difficult section.
The Lord describes in summary the body, knowledge and the knowable. This knowledge is of 3 things: the knower, the knowable and the process of knowing. Combined, these are called Vijnana.
Okay, so let's go line by line. So it becomes easy. So what do you understand here? The Lord has described what? 3 things: body, knowledge and the knowable. Correct? Body is Kshetra. Knowledge is Jnana. And the knowable is the Nyaya. Okay. Now this knowledge is of 3 things. Jnana should also be of 3 things. Jnana should be about the knower, the knowable and the process of knowing. Who is the supreme knower? Super Soul. Who is the person who should cultivate that knowledge? The soul. And what is the process of knowing? That also we saw earlier. Devotional service, right? Surrendering into a spiritual master. There are elements, components of that which was given. And there are so many things. Developing the qualities of a devotee, which are mentioned, 26 qualities of a devotee. In this case, 20 qualities were given. Development of those qualities, because we are Vaidhi Sadhana Bhaktas. Like that. Okay. And then it said, combined, these are all called Vijnana. So, what is the difference between Jnana and Vijnana? Jnana means knowledge. Vijnana means realized knowledge. Okay. Or the science of knowledge. Okay. It can mean both things. In Bhagavatam elsewhere, it is Vijnana is also mentioned as realized knowledge. Okay. Okay, Janeshwar Prabhu, please go on.
The combined these is called Vijnana, or the science of knowledge. Perfect knowledge can be understood by the unaware devotees of the Lord directly. Others are unable to understand. The monists say that at the ultimate stage, these three items becomes one, but the devotees do not attain this.
Do not accept it.
Do not accept this.
Yeah.
Continue, bro.
Yeah. So the monists say that all these are one. The Atma, the soul is the same as the super soul. And that's what Prabhupada is cautioning. That is Mayavadi philosophy. So the devotees do not accept this commentary, such a commentary. That is why we request devotees not to read the Mayavadi Bhagavad Gita from here and there. Okay.
Knowledge and development of knowledge mean understanding oneself in Krishna consciousness. We are being led by material consciousness, but as soon as we transfer all consciousness to Krishna's activity and realize that Krishna is everything, then we attain real knowledge. In other words, knowledge is nothing but the preliminary stage of understanding devotional service perfectly. In the 15th chapter, this will be very clearly explained.
So what is the goal of knowledge?
Start with devotion.
The goal of knowledge is to, knowledge must culminate in service, in devotional service.
Perfectly.
Now, to summarize, one may understand that the verse 6 and 7 beginning from Mahabhutani and continuing to Chetana Dhriti analyze the material elements and certain manifestations of symptoms of life. These combine to form the body or the field of activities.
Okay, so what is this line saying? That everyone gets his or her field of activities because of one's own karma. You remember that? Just recapping now. Okay, what we studied. Yeah, next.
And verse 8 through 12 from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the super soul.
Okay, so why is this knowledge required?
To know the soul.
Correct, but in the context of the earlier verses, what is the transition from the earlier verses 6, 7 to 8 through 12? What is the transition? Who remembers?
So we have process.
We gave an example also.
Question? Is that the fence boundary? What is the question?
Correct. Yeah, you're telling the answer. You got the question, otherwise you wouldn't have said the answer.
One should come.
No, when you said the example, okay, that was the amazing.
That was the example. So one's field of activities, though it may be huge, is still insignificant. Correct? In this material world. We may still say that I am handling, 10 projects. Okay? Or we may say I am handling, 15 departments. I am handling multiple companies. I am the Prime Minister handling multiple states. Correct? So you may say so many things, but still your jurisdiction is insignificant when compared to the cosmos. When compared to the absolute, then it is insignificant. So therefore, instead of deeply being embedded or entrenched in our mundane field of activities, what is the process of getting out of this mundane field of activities? To understand the absolute truth via the process of knowledge. So that is where the transition from 6 to 7, from our small frog in the well, Kshetragna, field of activities, we have to come out. And when will we come out? Only when we develop knowledge. Only when we have knowledge of something higher will come out of our lower activities, correct? So that is the transition. So please remember that. That is important in this section. Okay. And verses 8 through 12. Dineshwar.
And verses 8 through 12 from Amanitvam through Tattva Jnanartha Darshana describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the field of activities, namely the soul and the super soul.
Yeah, so without understanding the soul, without understanding the super soul, and without understanding the relationship, and without following the process, we cannot get out of, the frog cannot get out of its well. Okay. Yeah, go on.
Then verses 13 through 18, beginning from Anadi Matparam and continuing through Jyoti Sarvasya Krishdam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord or the super soul.
Okay, so we cannot understand the super soul without having some knowledge of the super soul, right? So in the last few verses, we were given knowledge of the super soul.
Thus, three items have been described: the field of activities, the body, the process of understanding, and both the soul and super soul. It is especially described here that only the unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these three items clearly. So far, these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is truly useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the supreme Lord Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired.
Congratulations. So, Lord Krishna uses the word Mad Bhakta to indicate that only his devotees can understand this subject matter. Others cannot understand. And devotees can understand the subject matter better during the earlier part of the day than at 9 o'clock in the night. Because it's a very technical section. Gauri Mataji, are you relieved? If you would have said no, I would know that you are lying. Hands up if you are relieved. Okay.
Still 15 verses to go.
Huh?
Still 15 verses to go.
Still 15 verses to go. Those are a little bit easier. We will not do it today. So this perfect knowledge can only be understood by unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. Others will be unable to understand. Now the next set of verses from 20 to 27 explain Prakriti and Purusha, the nature and the enjoyer. Nature, enjoyer and consciousness. These are the three topics. So they explain nature and the enjoyer, which are the first two topics about which Arjuna inquired. So I am stopping a little bit early today because the section was very heavy. To give all of you relief. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai!